Dobry večer, kako ste? Thank you very much. Thank you to the SGA for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. I love Belgrade. I used to live in Belgrade. I spent 5 years here, so it's great to be back. Here we go, the power. And it's down there. This is amazing. It's got everything. I feel like Taylor Swift up here. This is amazing. So I'm going to give you a talk about design success, hopefully. Basically, if you look at here, he's already given me a great introduction, so I don't need to go over that. So thank you very much. But here's some of the games that I've worked on. Angry Birds 2 up the top. So I'm currently design director at Rovio. Rovio Stockholm. So Rovio have many, many different studios. So I'm the design director at the Rovio, the Stockholm studio, which currently focuses on Angry Birds 2. But some of the other games here you might recognize. Show my age. I've been in the industry for many, many years, too many years. I lose count now. But you might also notice some of these Serbian games here as well. We're very proud to work on some of these and help with some of these successes. So, what is this talk about? There's me, looking a little less grey than usual. What I feel I could give the most back to you guys is talking about the biggest issues that I've faced in my career so far, especially from a design point of view, and hopefully give some practical solutions for that as well. It's focused on two areas, because these are the ones that I've been most, over the past kind of 10, 15 years, I've been most involved in, which is A, prototyping, so new games, coming up with new games, and B, working on live services. So once a game is released, how we manage that game and how we make it a success. It's a little bit wordy, so some of the slides have too many words, more words than I would normally put on, but I'd like to have this as something that you can maybe look back on later once you've downloaded it or got it later, because they're kind of standalone. Each one of these things is a standalone thing. Some of them might be useful to you, some of them might not be. You can take the ones that you like and you can look at them later as well. So, without further ado, let's move on. So this is the first section, prototyping new games. Some of the lessons that I've learned from trying to create new games, sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully. First thing first, before you do anything, I've always found it very useful, define your sandbox. So what I mean by that is understand what makes you different as a studio and how you will succeed against the plethora of other companies out there and other talent out there, which there's many. So here's the sandbox. What a sandbox is somewhere that you can play, somewhere that you can learn to do things, somewhere that has boundaries that you can operate within. So why would you do this? Why would you want a sandbox? First thing is, choosing where you're going to win is really, really hard. If anyone tells you it's easy or they've got the formula, it's not true. It's very hard. It's very much, a lot of it is just putting your finger in the air and seeing if it's going to work or not. But there are things that can help you along the way, and this is very much one of them. So what it does is it focuses where you're going to fight, what your battleground is, where you can do well. And on top of that, it gives you that opportunity to master it. So it's very important. When I'm talking about a sandbox, I'm not just talking about one game. I'm talking about this is an area where you can create multiple prototypes, multiple games, and as you go within this area, you learn and you begin to understand more and you begin to master it, and therefore you've got more chance of success. So a lot of these slides are going to be kind of along this format where I'm going to say, this is the problem, and this is how I've solved that problem, or at least helped solve that problem. So how to define a sandbox? It's easy stages, basically, but ask the following questions. First, what are your passions? As a studio, get together with the people in your studio and ask yourselves, what are you passionate about? For example, you might be passionate about educational games, and therefore that could be something that you talk about. That could be somewhere where you play and you're different to other people and you're really strong there. Second, what are your strengths? Again, as a studio, maybe you're great at 3D, ultra-realistic 3D graphics, for example. Use that strength. Oh. Bit of formatting issues, apologies for that. How will you stand out? So this very much depends. You can approach this in many different ways. For me, what this mostly means in the companies that I work with is how do you stand out in the market? What kind of places are we going to operate in? How are we going to compete against other people in that similar place? Maybe we can find a completely new place to operate in. All of those things are interesting, but it doesn't have to be the market. If you want to make a creative indie game, how are you going to make your game stand out? What's different about it? So, for example, here you could build a game for influencers. I've just recently been introduced to Mr. Beast by my kids and watched too many of them. But a lot of them are, the games that he's advertising, they have features or something that are promoting him, that are involving him. That's a way to do it, and then you get a lot of marketing. So something like that, how would you stand out? Also, where would you innovate? So a lot of these have some crossovers, but it's good to ask yourself these questions. How will you innovate? Where is it that you can really make a difference here? What is it that you're going to do new? Equally, maybe even more important, is where won't you innovate? So many of you probably know about the 80-20 rule, which is like 20% of games should be innovation, 80% should be copying other games or using influences of other games. Whether you subscribe to that or not, there will be some element of innovation, and there'll be some element of not innovating. And you should be clear about that. Don't be embarrassed about that. Like, for example, here, Angry Birds uses a saga map. So you go from level to level through a saga map. We didn't innovate on that. There's no shame in that. We innovated in other places, and that was it. So we knew where to put up our focus and our effort. Second point, once you've asked yourself those questions, sit down and discuss them. Like, for each of these, you don't have to have one answer. You can have multiple answers. Some of them, maybe you have no answers. But put these down, almost a brainstorm, and understand what is it that brings all these things together. And then keep the strongest ideas, the ones that work well together, the ones that you're most passionate about, the ones that you think will bring you the most success, and choose them. However many you want to choose, but it won't be all of them. Choose the ones that you think can define where you play. And the third one, and I'll mention this a few times, use it to focus your prototypes. So a lot of these things, and I've done this as well myself, I go through the process of doing this, and then I don't use it. If you don't use it, there's no point in going through the process, and this is the whole point of it. So use these things. When you're sitting down and coming up with a new game idea, ask yourself, does it fit our sandbox? Start with that. This is our sandbox. This is where we're playing. Does it fit into there? So, number 2, don't get caught in the success trap. What's the success trap? I hear you cry. So this, I'm not a big fan of Winston Churchill, but I've got to admit, he does have a lot of very quotable quotes. So this is one: perfection is the enemy of progress. And this kind of sums up what I'm talking about here. So if you imagine, oh, sorry, this is my fault. My formatting has gone completely off the road. It's kind of nice, though. It looks quite good. Arty, I would say. So imagine a scenario where you're sitting down, you've had maybe a successful game, and somebody says, you get together and you say, right, you know what? Our next game is going to be even more successful. Our second game is going to be more successful. It has to be $10 zillion. That's what we're going to make. And if it's any less than that, we don't want to do it. Now, that's good. That's ambitious. And there's nothing wrong with ambition. But there's a limit to the ambition. So if what you have, here's a kind of a very rough pipeline where you go from the prototype to pre-production, production, launch, soft launch, global launch, whatever, you get the idea. If your success criteria for accepting a game is so high that you're just staying on that first or maybe even the second place, and you're going round and round and round and round again, that's not good. All you're learning is those two first points. You're not learning more. And also, if you don't get a game out, there's no chance of success. So if you find that, even have an ambitious goal, but if you find that once you have that ambitious goal, you're not making any headway, you're not moving along the pipeline, then have a think and maybe think, this isn't working. For example, maybe we should lower our sights and say, let's make a top 200 game, for example. And then what you have here is you've got the whole pipeline, potentially. And then you're learning as you go along. So if you can imagine, let's say you spent 10 years trying to succeed in that first one. Imagine those 10 years, imagine what you could have done if you released 5, 6, 7 games. This is where you learn, this is how you learn. And even if all 6, 7 of those were not successful to some degree, you still learn more things, and it'll make you more, it'll give you more chance of success. So how not to get caught in the success trap. Ambition is good, like I said, but if you're not meeting your success criteria, time after time after time after time, pause and think, don't increase it. This might sound silly, but things do happen like this. I've seen this many, many times. It's like, and to some extent I understand it. It's like, well, our ambition wasn't high enough. Let's increase our ambition, then we'll get more games. It very often doesn't work like that. As I said before, ambition's fine, but if you're failing time after time after time, don't increase it, don't double down on it, reduce it. Get those games flowing, get things going. And as well, it gives a big morale boost to people working in the team as well. Don't chase your tail forever. This one sounds kind of obvious, design for your players, but even I, right now, with like many, many years of experience, that's why I'm saying even I, not because I'm amazing, but because I've had so much experience I shouldn't do this, I sometimes don't think about the players when I'm designing a feature or when I'm involved in designing a feature. So it's really important that we do this. We make games for players, right? And if you ask yourself the question every time you have a feature, are your players in mind when you design? If you answer yes, great, brilliant, you're doing the right thing. If you answer no, even for one feature or one event or one game or whatever, then who are you designing for? At the end of the day, you're not designing for anyone. There are some games, and this is fine, actually, but by the way, that you're designing, you make a game for yourself, and that's fine. And there's some successful games that have made that way. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to design generally for your players, always have them in mind. So here's a few examples of players. There's all sorts of, the players are so diverse that you need to understand them, and you probably won't be thinking in the same way as your players. So really do understand your players. I don't know who that guy is. It's a very important player there. So how to design for your players. There are many, many ways to design for your players. One of the ways that I like doing is to create personas, which a lot of people do, but use these personas very much. So create your personas, and they don't have to have too much in. You can get overly complex, but include demographics, include the goals of the player, what they want to achieve, include what the player enjoys. What do they enjoy? What do they like doing in a game? And also, which is very important, include what frustrates them. So you get an understanding of where they operate, what they like doing, what they don't like doing. And this really, really helps when you're thinking about the designing. And the first question that you should always ask when you're designing something, whether it's a game, feature, event, whatever, how will this persona react to this design? And go from there and understand that. And then after that, test if players reacted how you thought, because like everything, you're probably going to get this wrong the first time, and that's absolutely fine. But if you test, and then you say, the player actually behaved very, very differently to how I thought, great, you've learned something. Then next time round, you change your persona, and you know who to design for, and that's fine. Okay, some tools to use. So motivation models like Quantic Foundries, there's others as well, but I like these. This gives you a real kind of good insight into how players behave. And this, I guess this is some good examples. Like, for example, if you're a social gamer, you like competition, which means that you like duels, you like matches, you like being high on the ranking, you like community. All of these things really help you when you're making design decisions and game decisions about which direction to go in. So it's very, 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 very useful. Services like Playtest Cloud. So Playtest Cloud, for those of you who don't know, is a service where you can upload prototypes and playables and all sorts of things, and players play them, and you can watch them, and you can ask them questions, and etc. Things like that. Very useful to find out what's happening. Concept tests, so you can test ideas when they're just on paper, and you can get some good information back. So concept tests are where you kind of write a description, and you get a few people to come and read those descriptions, and they give you feedback. And if you do it right, it does take skill, but if you do it right, or employ a company who can do it right, then you can get really good information back from them. An anti-persona is a good one. Who aren't you making this game for? And that is equally as useful. You can see who you're not, and you can go in a different direction. And of course, surveys, and especially to give you feedback on the choices that you've made. So number 4, prototyping needs to be small, fast, and iterative. Again, it's one of those things like the players that it does sound obvious, but it's very easy to not do. So why is this important? You don't know if you'll get success, to be honest with you. You know, when you're making a new game, until you release it globally, you can't be 100% certain that it's going to be a success. Nobody can, no matter what they say to you. So the further back you are in that pipeline, the more uncertain you are. When you're starting, you're kind of there's a whole load of uncertainty here. And as you go through, you progress, you get more and more certainty, but it also costs more and more money. So it's that balance between that. So what you want to do here is to try different games, try different prototypes, try different things. And the wider you try, the more you'll know. So this is why it's very good to be quite quick and fast, because you can try different things out. So how to keep it small, fast, and iterative. Beg, borrow, and I can't quite. I think it says steal, but I wouldn't encourage you to steal, obviously. So beg, borrow, and steal. Make things quickly. Things like the Unity Asset Store are your friend. Don't feel like you have to create everything. When you're making a new game and you're prototyping a new game, the whole goal: do it quickly. Do it quickly. Get that as quickly as possible. If you can make a physical prototype that gives you what you want to know, great. Do that. Do it as quickly as possible, so don't feel like you have to make anything. And go in with the attitude of you're going to throw your tech away. Don't keep your tech. If you keep your tech, you're going to slow down, and you're going to throw the tech away anyway. So just go in straight away with that. Don't get stuck to one idea. This is really, really important. It's very easy. The way I see it is that if you have an idea, there's a lot of blanks in your head. And depending on how much you like the idea or how much of you're a positive or negative person, etc., a lot of those blanks can be really positive. So you think, I've got this idea, it's going to be the best game ever. It's going to be brilliant. And then you start exploring, and those blanks start getting filled in, and you realize, that's a negative blank, that's a negative, all of these things happening. But it's still very easy to keep going and say, well, if I just try this one more thing, it might be saved. That's good. You do have to have some of that, but at some point you need to stop and say, this is a bad idea. And one way of doing that is to not just get stuck on one idea first. Go wide, brainstorm lots of ideas, prototype lots of ideas, even if you think that first idea is your favorite. And don't try to solve everything. So choose 1 to 3 goals. For example, be very specific about this, like what if the one-handed controls work in this prototype. If you're making a game that's very important to have one-handed controls, then test that. That's what you want to test, and understand that. And if you have clear goals, then you can get clearer answers. And test only for the goals. Except one big thing, always test if it's fun. I've put fun in scary words because very often I have come across people saying, you can't test for fun. Fun is irrelevant. Don't do fun. Do fun. This is what games is about, right? Games should be fun. So do test for fun. It shouldn't be scary. That doesn't mean to say that you can't take into account all the other things that you need to, marketing, business opportunities, all of those things. Of course you do. But if you're sitting down with a prototype as a team and none of you is having fun, then I would say it's probably not a good game to go on with. So fun isn't a dirty word or a scary word. Number 5, don't go to production early. If you ramp up to production, you will enter hell. Don't do it. I'm going to say this a few times. Just don't do it. Don't do it. I've seen it a lot, and it happens. It still happens. It happens all over the place. Why do you want to do this? Stop your game failing. Stop you losing lots of money. Stop your hair turning grey. This will be you the day after you start going into production early. Don't do it. And this is what happened if you go into production early. You'll have to make up tasks. You won't iterate effectively. And this is my personal opinion, but your game is going to be shit. Let's be honest. So, how to stop hell? This is a big question. This is what your team will look like if you're in hell. They will be uncertain of what's going on. They will be asking lots of questions. They'll be wanting to get tasks that aren't there. All of those things are not good. So don't do it. So how do you stop going to hell? Just answer 3 questions. That's all you need to do. 3 questions, and you won't go to hell. There you go. Is your game fun for your players? Now, you have to answer this. You have to know this. So it's not just good enough asking the question. You have to answer it, and you have to understand, is it fun for players? And do what you can and you need to in order to answer that question. Do you know how you'll make money? That's if you want to make money, of course, but if you do, then do you know how you make it? That doesn't mean to say that you have to have everything built and designed and played out, but you need to know how, for example, your core and your meta are going to work together, what your monetization strategy is. Understand that, because if you go into production before you know that, it's going to be very, very, very hard to pull that back and turn it around. Third thing is, can you scale content? So if you build the best game with the best monetization, and then you get to production and you realize that you're going to need like 10 years worth of content every month, it's going to be hard to do, and you're not going to be able to do it. So this is something that you need to think about. Can you scale it? Can you make the content that you need to make? So again, you don't have to actually make the content, but you do need to understand what content there is and how you make it. So that's the first section done. Running live games, second section. So another 5 issues that I've come across in my career. First, again, it's one of those things which sounds obvious but isn't done a lot. So just to kind of remind us all to do this, set a clear vision and pillars. So why do you do this? Focus your designs. If you have a clear vision, you go in the same direction. It's as simple as that. Make a cohesive game, make a cohesive team. They're very, very important things. And if you don't do that, it makes it harder. It's not impossible, but it makes it harder. So how do you set clear vision and pillars? Tell the story of your game. So spend get together with your team, and in your own words, agree upon a story of your game. So it shouldn't be long, but it should be something, like 3 or 4 paragraphs where you're explaining what your game is. And that can be your vision. And out of that vision, create 3 to 5 pillars to support it. Again, these are the most important things. So the pillars are kind of short phrases that sum up your game. And have no more than 3 to 5. Don't have less than 3, don't have more than 5. In that way, you can kind of, you have enough to design for, but you don't have too much that it defeats the purpose of having the pillars. I'm going to give you some tips on how to do this, but it's really important that everybody aligns on this and understands what these things mean, because there's a lot of room for and scope for misunderstanding here. And again, as I said before, use this. Don't go through all this process and then not use it. Do use it. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is a vision statement from a famous game. I'll just read the last bit and see if you can guess the game. So, this is the wasteland. Life is cheap and violence is all that there is. We are going to grab the player's guts and remind him of this. Anyone know what game that is? Yeah, perfect. So this is great. You can see this straight away from this vision statement, what game this is. And obviously it's a famous game, that helps. But still, this gives you an idea of what kind of vision you want to go for. And this helps so much with design. So some useful tools for that. Yeah, sure. We know what we're making. I was a consultant for a little while, and some of the places that I went to, not all of them, but some of them, I did a very, very simple exercise where you get together, whether it's the leadership team or the game team or whatever, and you sit down and you say, often this is a game that's already out, and you say, what are the top 3 goals of this game? What is your game about? What are the pillars, if you like, of this game? And there's no discussion. I ask them to write it down on a piece of paper. They write it down, and then after they've written it down in silence, we compare it. And there hasn't been a single time where this has been aligned. People think that they are aligned, but they're not. So it's really, this is a really useful exercise to do. Even if you're in a pub or kafana or whatever, and you're sitting down and you're designing a game, and you think you're all aligned, few drinks, few rakias, do this and see if you are really aligned. Second thing, this is quite obvious, but it's really useful. Put the pillars, once you've got pillars, put them everywhere so people can see them. If you work on site, put them up in the office. If you're online, put them in every documentation. So everybody is always reminded of these pillars. You don't have to kind of call them out every time, but if people see them all the time, it's really good, a really good way of aligning. This is a bit of a nasty one, so you don't have to do this, but every so often you can ask like a random team member, hey, what are the vision? What's the vision? What's the pillars? And you see if they answer. The goal here isn't to catch them out, by the way. If they don't know, it's not their fault, it's your fault. You should be telling them what the vision is, telling them what the pillars are. Everybody in the team should be aligned on this. So it's not to catch them out, but they might feel a little bit caught out sometimes. But it's a useful way of gauging how successful you've been. So another obvious one, but another one that doesn't get done all the time, always have a brief. For every event, for every feature, for every new game, for everything that you want to do, have a brief. Why do you do this? It cuts down on rejecting ideas. So I've been so many meetings where we're trying to decide whether an idea is good enough. And if the brief hasn't been done or it hasn't been done well enough, there's no criteria to judge it by. So the designer is there saying, well, look, I got the team here, we worked on this design, it's been brilliant, I thought I fulfilled what we were supposed to do, and then whoever's judging, making the decision, is saying, well, it didn't quite fit what I wanted. Well, what did you want? We didn't know. So it's really, really important to get this down early. And to make sure that we're designing for the player and for the game. The brief is actually a really good place where we can bring a lot of the other things together. For example, your target audience, your player types, your personas, the vision and the pillars, all these things can come into the brief, and you can ask yourself those questions, as we'll see in a minute here. So in a brief, there's many different ways of doing a brief. This is what I'd like to answer in a brief, and it's quite a lot, but what is the opportunity or problem to solve? And very often I like to start with the player's point of view and then have a game point of view. So as a player, blah, 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 as a game, etc. Who are the target players and why is it good for them? This is very important, very, very important. Why will it help the business? Also important. How does this align with the vision and pillars, as I mentioned? What are the qualitative and quantitative metrics? Don't ignore, it depends on which company you are, but I've been in a lot of mobile business-focused companies, and quantitative, I always get mixed up with these, quantitative metrics are the ones that are always there. 5% increase in this KPI or that. They're good, they're useful, but don't just do that. Also have qualitative metrics, including like how it's received by the team. You can have reports about the players and how they received events and things like that. So do have them. They're very useful. What are the constraints? Again, very important. Make sure that you understand what the constraints are. You understand what you're not allowed to do in this design. And what are the risks? And again, as a team, you can talk about these risks. It's very, very useful. A lot of the time, the earlier you can come up with problems, the cheaper it is and the better it is and the quicker it is. So do this as much as you possibly can. And then what's the timeline or the quality bar? Depending on if you have time-based milestones, then you need to know when those milestones are. If you kind of more veer towards, right, it needs to be this level of quality and it'll take however long it takes, then you need to know what that level of quality is. And this is really, really, really important. Who owns what? Who's making the decisions? In which circumstances? Who's making the creative decisions? Who's making the final decisions? Who's making the business decisions? All these things, if you can get that in, it makes it so much easier to deal with people. Second thing, you can answer all of these as much as you want and do a really good job, but if nobody understands the answers, then it's useless. So sit down with your team, make sure that they all understand this. The answers. Right, this is going to be a short one, this slide. Run design sprints. It's not because it's not important, it's because it's such a big topic that it's almost like a whole talk and workshop on its own. But this is probably the thing that has made the biggest difference to me. I'll go into what design sprints are in a minute, but if you want better features, run design sprints. If you want to build features faster, run design sprints. If you want a team that works better together, run design sprints. So design sprints it's not, they originally came from, I think they're Google design sprints from what I understand. So you can take the basis and you can adapt it and all that sort of stuff. But the basis of it is that you have a creative process where people are getting together that are needed to get together. So all the experts, you have the designers, but you also have the artists, the coders, the PMs, the marketing people, the analysts, everybody that's needed, QA, everybody who's needed is involved in the process of building a feature for your product, for your game. And that's really powerful. It doesn't mean to say, so some of the criticism for design sprints, sometimes I hear, it's designed by democracy, designed by vote. It's not. there are people here who, in this process that make the decisions. It's just trying to get to those decisions in a better way, in a quicker way, and in a way where all of the team are involved and giving their input. Not necessarily making the decisions, but giving their input, which is a key thing. So I'll go over this quickly, but understand the challenge. This is the process of the design sprint. You first understand the challenge as a team. You map the goals as a team. You brainstorm ideas as a team. You storyboard, and you give your feedback as a team, and then there's somebody who decides in the different areas. It's different people in different areas. And then you plan and build as a team, and you test and iterate. And this is a cycle, and you go through it, and you go quickly, and you work as a team. As I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's so much to go into here, but if you are interested, if you have a team that you either want to be faster or isn't working so well together or is very craft-based and not working together as a team, look into design sprints. It's very, very, very good. Right, this one, create, designer, PM, love. So PM is product manager. So I have seen this relationship be more fractious and more tense than any other, more often. But it's also the most important relationship. So you don't often get PMs outside of, I mean, you know, in PC-based games, you might not know, have much of an insight into what PMs do. But the PMs are basically the business side of creating a game, and the designers are the creative side of making a game. And if I go through this quickly, creativity, business, this together is the yin and yang of making games. This is great. And you can have different balances, but if you can get this working well, this is the secret sauce. But as I say here, it's the most important relationship, but also often the most tense. It is the secret sauce, in my opinion, but it's delicate. So, how to create love? Big question again. So this isn't love. This is fighting. And anger and hatred. You can see in their eyes the anger and hatred, for sure. So it's not rocket science, but it is persistence. So the first thing is define the roles, understand what each are responsible for. And this will be different in different companies and different studios, but don't shy away from it. If you want to be business-led, it's fine to give more decision-making and roles and responsibilities to the PMs, but still define it, and still define what the designer is responsible for and what they make decisions over, and vice versa as well. As I said before, define decision makers, make this really, really clear. Deal with issues directly. So I've been involved, and I've done this myself actually, where you don't quite get on with one of the PMs as a designer, and vice versa. And so instead of meeting it head on, you kind of tiptoe around and you avoid them, and you don't make the right decisions together. Don't do that. And if you see it happening in other places, don't let it happen either. Let them get them together. Sit down, talk it through, tackle those big issues that they have with each other. Not all the time, but often. And get them drunk on love. Even if it takes going out somewhere and making them, getting all the issues out, this is a really important relationship. So get them out, get them whatever it takes to talk to each other. And if you do, and they work well together, this will be a big part of your success. Oh, sorry, go back. Yeah, and then this is what happens. See, it's beautiful. Right, don't be an MVP game. MVP, minimum viable product. Now, what I mean by this is not don't do MVPs, but it is the MVP, what I call the MVP scenario. So, okay, imagine this. You build MVPs. This is great. It's what you should be doing. Then you release them, and then you never iterate. This happens so many times. I'm not saying you all do it, but it happens a lot in many, many different companies. And what you have is a game full of MVPs. There's an MVP game. So you should plan for sure to iterate. Is this good? I don't think it is. I wouldn't like that umbrella. So, how not to be an MVP game? Again, quite simple. Set time. This is probably the most important thing. Set time aside for iterations from the start. Don't say, we're going to do the MVP and then we'll see what happens. Say, we're going to do the MVP. Straight after the MVP, we're going to iterate. And straight after that, we're going to iterate. Maybe you don't in the end, but plan for it. And if you don't, then you get that time back and you can do something else. Review data and player sentiment. Use this to make sure that you're going, in the right direction, and that you maybe you need to change. This is what's so good about kind of mobile gaming and event-driven gaming, where you can release something and you can see the data and you can see there in real time. You can talk to the players and you can see, well, this isn't exactly working out how I planned, but you know what? I've got an opportunity to change that. It's great. You never used to be able to do that back in the old days. And have a very good reason to stop iterating. So you can stop iterating, but almost shift it round the other way. Instead of kind of saying, oh, if it's successful, we'll iterate. Say, we will iterate unless there's a really good reason not to. And then you will get a non-MVP game, which is beautiful. So, last thing I just wanted to mention about Serbian games. Serbia, the good, the bad, and the plasma. Sorry, my formatting strikes again. So let me. As I mentioned before, I've lived in Serbia before, and I loved Serbia. I really love Serbia. I got nostalgic today flying in and seeing Belgrade for many, many reasons. But I'm going to start by talking about three things that I don't miss about Serbia. Excuse me. So please excuse me. First is, to be honest, I don't miss the pollution in winter. I do though miss sometimes. I used to look on the app. I had the pollution app, and it was quite exciting to see where we were placed against the Chinese cities or the Indian cities. And when you reach number one, sometimes you are, come on, this is good. But generally, I don't miss that. Promaya, don't miss that. I'm not sure I'm saying this properly, but yeah. I don't miss standing on a bus. Middle of summer, 40 degrees heat, I open the window, feel the breeze on my face, and then an old angry man stands up and slams the window shut and looks at me with a death stare. I don't miss that. Third one is going to be very controversial, so I apologize. I don't miss plasma. I don't miss plasma. I can't stand plasma. This is the driest biscuit in the world. I'm actually 20 years old, but I had a plasma once and it sucked all of the juice out of me. I'm sorry, but no to plasma. The chocolate plasmas, they're great. I like them. But I do want to talk about, so I had to struggle to come up with things that I didn't miss about Belgrade. I didn't have to struggle about things that I do miss. It's a magical place. It's a brilliant place. And, I can talk about the personal things, but for this, I thought about some of the game things. And I just chose 3. I could have chosen 100. I just chose 3. The passion of the people. I mean, it's incredible. I have to admit, before I came to Serbia, and I'm sorry again about this, but I thought that I had this idea in my head that Serbian people were going to be quite cold. And it's the opposite. It's amazing. It's brilliant. And the passion you can see in the games. And you saw earlier on with Christina's presentation how successful Serbian games are becoming. And they're becoming more and more successful and going up and going in a really good direction. And part of it is this. I loved working in these environments. I miss it, to be honest. I don't see as much passion where I'm not going to say too much, but in other places that I have worked, I don't see as much passion. The drive to be better, to learn. I think the question I got asked the most is what books do you recommend so that I can learn more? Everybody wants to learn more. Everybody wants to improve themselves, and it's incredible. Before I came to Serbia, I'd kind of lost my way a little bit in some aspects, and I thought, I'd kind of let myself drift a little bit. And then when I came here, it rubbed off on me, and I got that drive back, and it's amazing. Third thing is tech. I could have chosen lots of things, but I'm going to choose tech because you have incredible tech people here. Incredible. They're fast, people are involved, they have good opinions, they give you the directions and all. On top of that, and this goes back to from the previous presentation, I've worked in many different countries and many different places over Europe. I've never seen anyone that comes close to having as many women in tech as Serbia. It's incredible. It's a superpower. This is great. This is going to put you ahead of lots of different countries if you can embrace that, which you are doing. So this is brilliant. So these 3 things I chose. I could have chosen a whole load of more, but this, I think, is going to give you, these things are going to give you a real advantage, and it's exciting to see how many games companies are springing up, the games that are coming out, the diversity of the games that are coming out. Serbia is going to go places with games, it's clear. And on that note as well, volim te, Serbia. Love you. I'll just finish on hvala i vidimo se. Thank you.